This is a story about redemption. This is a story about a 12-year-old girl who was completely insecure and wrapped up and anxious and just desperate for attention and affection and found it in not healthy ways. This is a story about a 21-year-old woman who thought the fun life was with alcohol and at the bars and inappropriate relationships. This is a story about a 25-year-old who thought she knew it all and was just going places and had life figured out. This is a story of redemption about a 30-year-old who was the biggest control freak but did not see it at all and was ruining relationships right and left because of it. This is about a 40-plus-year-old who is starting to figure out that life can be a lot of fun, and it all begins with the redemption that Jesus offers us. I used to think that I wasn't redeemed because God hasn't, and all of those, that's the story of me. That is the sum of my life and what God has brought me through. But I used to think right up until recently that I wasn't redeemed because God hadn't redeemed everything in my life. And I was thinking if God would redeem everything from my past, then I would be redeemed. And he kept trying to convince me that I'm already redeemed. You are already redeemed. That is the story of the cross. Redeemed is our status. He redeems what we do and who we are and who we get to become. But you are redeemed. And when that hit my heart, I just lit up. I mean, it's such a simple truth, and I hope you guys know that already. I'm usually late to the party on these kind of things, but you are redeemed. That is your status with God. And so I'm going to go over 6 things that God put on my heart to talk about in this redemption story. Number 1 in your handout, redemption is for everyone who calls on the name of the Lord. Psalm 34:22 says, "The Lord redeems the life of his servants. None of those who take refuge in him will be condemned." He redeems the life of his servants. Now, all of you are servants of God. Whether you're a good servant or a bad servant, that is not up to me. That is between you and God. I hope you are the good servant. But there's been times in my life where God's convicted me that I wasn't being a good servant. So if you are not a good servant, I'm not judging you. I can relate to Paul when Paul says, "I am the least of these guys. I will never judge you for what you've done because either I've done it or done it worse." So just think about that for a minute, though. You are a servant of Christ. You are a servant of God, and he calls you redeemed. But are you standing in that? Are you a good servant to him? And for me, I want to be a good servant just out of gratitude for what he's done for me. The definition of redeem is to compensate for the faults of bad aspects of something, to gain or regain possession of something in exchange for payment. That's exactly what Jesus did on the cross. And I've been thinking about this through this Easter season. That's exactly what he did. We were his possession, then we sinned, and we couldn't be his possession because God is a holy God and he can't be in the presence of unholy. Then Jesus came to repossess us. I love that. He repossessed us with a payment. Christ paid the ultimate payment for us. It's the story of the cross. I hope we never get tired of that. Easter after Easter, day after day. Let's thank Jesus for that. Number 2, redemption is applicable. You get to apply this to your life. It's not just a fun fact that makes me feel good for 2 seconds and then I get to wrap myself in shame and guilt all over again. It's applicable. I hope you already know the truth that you are redeemed, but it's personal. And when you apply it to your life, watch God use you in power and victory and to glorify him. Romans 3:23-24 says, "For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God." That's usually where we stop. But there's more. "And all are justified freely by the grace through the redemption that came by Christ Jesus." So whether you feel worthy, whether you feel unworthy, dirty, messy, however it is, that's not how God sees you. He calls you his redeemed. That's just who you are. That's who you are to him. And like I always say, if you don't agree with God, you're wrong. You're wrong, not God. Number 3, redemption is priceless. God paid the ultimate price for us. And I don't know about you, but when I have something that's priceless, I want to take care of it. I want to look after it. My husband Vic bought me a pair of diamond earrings several years ago, and I didn't want to wear them because I didn't want to lose them. And it kind of hurt his feelings. After a couple months, he's like, "Don't you like those earrings?" I'm like, "I love them so much. I want to keep them safe and in the drawer. I don't want to lose it." And then I started thinking, he wants me to wear it, and it brings him joy when I put them on. You guys know where I'm going with this, right? So if we are redeemed and we just want to tuck it away and not do anything with it because we don't want to, fall down on our face or do something wrong or step out for God and then not be redeemed, and God is saying, "But don't you like what I've given you? It looks so good on you. Let me see you wear it," right? And when God picks something out for you, you can wear it in a way that no one else can. It is priceless. So hold it with value and thankfulness and gratefulness. So, being priceless, Jesus came to earth to die on the cross. But there's so much more that he did. During this Easter season, I read all 4 of the accounts of the resurrection, kind of side by side comparing, and just, I just love studying the Bible. I'm so thankful for that. But there was something that God was telling me. He was saying, "I didn't just come to die on the cross to save you so I could bring you to heaven. I came for so much more." And he came for relationship. And that's why it's priceless. To have relationship with God is priceless. We all know what happened, how Peter denied Jesus. And Peter has that huge failure record because of that. But I read something in Mark's account of the resurrection. In Mark 16:7, this is the angel talking to the women. "But go tell the disciples and Peter that he is going before you to Galilee. There you will see him, just as he told you." And I thought, that's interesting. Why would the angel single out Peter? And as I was thinking about this with God, I felt God tell me I was concerned about him. He just blown it. I was concerned about him. That is the God that we serve. When you blow it, God is not saying, "Gosh darn it, would you get it together?" He's saying, "Oh my goodness, my daughter, I'm concerned about you. I did not die on the cross so you could live in shame and guilt and fear. When you blow it, come to me." And that God that went after Peter, singled him out, that's the same God that he wants to do that with us. He said, "If you just blew it, made a huge mistake, come to me. I'm concerned about you." I love that, don't you? You guys maybe know this, I don't know. But that really just touched my heart and blessed me. So if you've just blown it, God is concerned about you. And what I love is when Jesus did have interaction with Peter, it was beautiful. It was awesome. And one of the things, this is the next thing in your outline, redemption is reparative. It's reparative. When Jesus had interactions with Peter, it wasn't, "You wicked disciple, I don't know why I chose you. You hurt my feelings. You disgraced me." He said, "Peter, do you love me? I still have that job for you. Peter, do you love me? I still want to use you." Nothing has changed. And I don't know about you, but the failures in my life have taught me things that are priceless. But after you make those big mistakes, you need to have the reparative work. I've been reading a book. It's you guys might have heard of it. It's called Changes That Heal by Dr. Henry Cloud. Dr. Henry Cloud is the one that wrote the Boundaries book. So I was kind of getting stuck a little bit in my life, not able to make some traction, and called my favorite pastor, which is also my brother, and he said, "You need to read this book." And after about 1 chapter, I was like, "Oh my goodness, this book is amazing." It's absolutely amazing. The repair work that I needed to do at that season of my life was I needed to go back to my previous self, to that 12-year-old girl that just needed attention and affection, and talk to her. And not just like, "Oh, you messed up and you did this," but to talk to that person with compassion. Because I don't know about you, but when I need to change and when I need to kind of take another step, if I'm just berated with judgment and all that, it's just going to, a heavier weight is going to be on me, and I'm not going to have the strength to keep going to do what I need to do. And that's the whole issue with this. So I went back to that 12-year-old girl and say, "You're priceless. You don't need anybody's approval. You don't need anybody's," you know what I mean? So, and this stemmed from a point where I couldn't be in the house with my husband, Vic, without feeling on edge. And I was thinking, I just sat with God for a little bit because Vic wasn't doing anything wrong. He was just sitting playing with the kids. Why am I on edge? And so I think Debbie had me do this exercise a long time ago, is when you feel that feeling, think about in your life the very first time you had that feeling. And so the very first time I had that feeling that I could remember was about in middle school. And the reason I was on edge is because I wasn't getting attention. I needed attention. Somebody had to validate me. Somebody had to tell me I was worth something. And so if you can do that exercise, you can go back to your previous self and talk to yourself with compassion. I had to go back to my 21-year-old self and say, hey, I know you just wanted to have some fun in life, but that's not what you really want. What you really want is to help people, and you're not going to help people if you're going to be drinking like that. So do you see what I'm saying? And then what Henry Cloud's, the psychology behind it is that I got stuck somewhere at 12. I got stuck somewhere at 21. And at 30, when I was 30, oh my gosh, I was wanting to control everything, and it was out of fear. I wanted to control my husband, control just everybody around me. If everybody would just do what I wanted to do, I wouldn't get hurt and I would be fine. And I had to go to that 30-year-old and say, even if you had everything that you wanted, just so there would still be a hole in your soul that can only be filled with God. You're not in control. You can trust God. And as I'm starting to do this, as you go back and talk to your previous self, it helps that person grow up into who you are today. So what I'm telling myself now, so I don't get stuck here, is your family needs a happy, healthy you. I know you want to do everything for them, have perfect meals and the house all clean and everything just perfect. But what they need is a happy, healthy mom. And so I've been doing easier dinners and playing more chess games. Or instead of doing my emails before dinner, I'll go outside and play basketball with my kids. And it's amazing how much it changes because they need a happy, healthy me. Do you guys see how this kind of works a little bit? Is this making sense? I encourage you guys to do this. That has been huge reparative work, and it's coming from a point where I had to know I'm already redeemed, I'm already saved, but there's some repair work that needs to happen. And as I do that reparative work, I see redemption come out of it. All those situations are being redeemed, but it takes work. Number 5, redemption is restful. You can rest in the fact that you don't have to earn it at all. During my reading of the 4 accounts of the resurrection, here's some things that I learned that I never knew. Maybe this will bless you guys. On Good Friday, when Jesus died, it was about the time in the afternoon that sacrifices were being done in the temple. And we know that Jesus is our sacrifice, right? That's not a coincidence. That's so on purpose. I didn't know that. I thought, I don't know, Jesus kind of died in the afternoon. I don't know, but it's on purpose. And it's not a coincidence. Also, Saturday, when Jesus was silent in the tomb, that was their Sabbath, the Jewish Sabbath. And on Sabbath, Jesus resting was conquering death. And so I'm thinking, God, if you're always working and you conquer death when you are resting, I can rest in your power. I can totally rest in your power. There's nothing too hard for you. And when I see little details like that come out, I learned this story when I was, preschool at church, but to see all this come to life all over again, it's fascinating for me. And what this does for me is God, it just hammered into my heart that God does not miss a thing. Because sometimes I know God sees me, but sometimes I'm like, Lord, there is a lot going on here that you're not paying attention to, so let me just tell you what's going on because it's really frustrating. You're obviously distracted doing something else, helping somebody else that's nicer or more holy or something. And God is telling me through this, He's telling you, He doesn't miss a thing. I love that. So I hope you can rest in that Jesus knows way more than you know about your situation. And I was thinking about, we don't know a lot about what happened when Jesus was in the tomb, and I tried to do some research on it and couldn't quite finalize what it is. There's hints a little bit here and there, but I can't wait to get to heaven and ask Him, how did it really go? When you met death, did death just hand over the keys, you're the Son of God, I'm not even going to fight? Or did death confidently step into the ring? And, or did death start to come at you and you're I got to wake up early in the morning. So, you know what I mean? My imagination just goes crazy. And then when I get to heaven, I hope I get to hear those words, well done, good and faithful servant. But then right next to it, I hope I get to ask God all the questions. I'm going to be there for 10,000 years just asking Him all the questions. And I can just imagine, this is not biblical, so don't take this as not part of the Bible study. But I can just imagine getting to heaven and asking God a million questions. He's like, you know what, Brooke? I knew you were going to have all these questions. I made you with that inquisitive mind, so I've actually assigned you your very own angel. And I can just imagine my angel kind of serious. tipping his glasses down, looking back up, and I'm like, okay, so how did this happen, and why really is the sky blue? Is that God's just favorite color? I mean, it's really awesome, but you know what I mean? I just can't wait to figure out all the things, and that's why I do all this study in here. But we can rest knowing that God sees everything, every little detail that we will never, ever be able to capture this side of heaven. Do you know who else was resting? On the Sabbath, listen to this, Luke 23, 55 through 56. The woman who had come with him from Galilee followed and saw the tomb and how his body was laid. Then they returned and prepared spices and ointments. On the Sabbath, they rested according to the commandments. These are the women that followed Jesus. And when they couldn't do anything more and the stone was rolled away, they went home. The next day was the Sabbath and they rested. I've never caught that detail before. And I thought, my goodness, their life just got turned upside down. Everything that they knew seemed like it had come to an end. And they rested. I don't know about you, but when my life goes upside down, I don't rest. I don't sleep. I don't eat. I just panic and freak out. And I'm thinking, my goodness, these women, they knew where it was at. They could rest. And I love that. So when your life gets turned upside down, when something bad happens, everything that you know comes to an end, can you rest? That's a challenge. I don't know if I can say yes to that right now. I want to get to that place. But right now, that is a huge challenge to me. But when we know that we have a redemptive God who doesn't miss anything, we can rest. We absolutely can rest. Oh, I was thinking about this too. The women that rested and tried to get to Jesus' body, they were the first ones to find out that Jesus has resurrected. They weren't the first ones to see him, but they were the first ones for the news. And I was thinking about that too. Like, if God doesn't miss anything, if he doesn't miss a detail, why? And I felt like God was just telling me that their faith was still in action. The other disciples went back and like, well, what do we do now? And the women are like, nope, we're still following Jesus. We're still seeking for Jesus. We're still trying to serve Jesus. We're still trying to be close with him. And I thought that was really cool. So for me, when I want to see God more, when I want him to reveal to me more and to bless me or whatever I want from him, if I can seek him, my faith is still in action. Still do what you know to do. You can trust his timing. Number 6 in your outline. Redemption is freedom. Redemption is freedom. When your whole entire being knows that you are redeemed and loved, there is a freedom that Christ died for that he wants you to walk in. Thomas didn't believe the resurrection. Freedom in Jesus was no longer an option for him. This is John 20, verses 24 through 25. Now Thomas, one of the 12, called the twin, was not with them when Jesus came. So the other disciples told him, "We have seen the Lord." But he said to them, "Unless I see in his hands the mark of the nails, and place my finger into the mark of the nails, and place my hand into his side, I will never believe." I know Thomas gets a bad rap, but I want to unpack this just a little bit. Thomas was told by Jesus that Jesus would die and get risen in 3 days. He heard that several different times, at least 3 different times. And then when it actually happened, Thomas didn't believe. And I was thinking, why is that? Because if Jesus tells me something and it looks like it's not going to happen, why don't I believe? Well, God said, "I'm going to heal your marriage." And when it looked like it wasn't going to happen, and it looked like again it wasn't happen, you know what happened to me? I decided not to believe. I was still going to follow God. And the reason I chose not to believe for a season is because it hurt. It hurt so bad to want something so much and think I had a promise from God. And then to sit in it and watch it go in the opposite direction, so I thought. It hurts. And I believe that's what Thomas was feeling. He was hurt. Do you guys ever do that? Like, it's so hard to hope. And God is saying, I have promised, it will be. And so I'm trying to learn now when God gives me a promise, and whatever it is, whatever you're looking for, freedom from an addiction or from fear or a healed relationship, whatever you feel like God has said yes to, but just not yet, It hurts to hope, but it blesses God so much when we do. John 20:26-29 says, 8 days later, his disciples were inside again, and Thomas was with them. Although the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." Then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here and see my hands, and put out your hand and place it in my side. Do not disbelieve, but believe." Thomas answered him, "My Lord and my God." Jesus said to him, "Have you believed because you have seen me? Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed." Several things I want to mention about this. Jesus met Thomas where he was at. He didn't, again, rebuke him like he did Peter, or like I was saying about Peter. He didn't say, "I shouldn't have chose you. You don't believe, lack of faith," all that. He met Thomas where he's at. He's saying, if that's what you need to believe in me, I can do that. I can do that. But then he uses it as a teaching moment. Blessed is the one who has not seen and yet has believed. And I gotta tell you guys this, I'm so excited to say this. I have been waiting for years for something, and this morning was the thing. I've been waiting for years to be healed and free of something. And this morning, about 10 minutes before my alarm went off, Jesus woke me up and he gave me a vision of me in a prison, and I came out of that prison, and that prison was this big compared to me. And I hope that's my faith. I hope my faith got bigger. But I had chosen just recently, God, I believe you've promised me this, and I'm not going to be like Thomas. I'm going to believe, and I'm going to praise you just like Paul and Silas did in prison. I'm going to praise you until you break me out of here. I'm going to praise you because you're good. I'm going to praise you because I'm redeemed. I don't like it in prison, but I love that you're with me. I'd rather be over there, but if that's not your timing, okay. And when I was thinking about this timing just recently, I was sitting at an intersection, like a stoplight, and I had the red light, and it seemed like it was taking forever. And I'm like, there's no one around. There's no one around. I could just bust right through that right. It's on the guy. Probably not a good idea, but it was just me. I'm like, why? And then out of nowhere, this car vroom, went right across. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'd be toast. I'd totally be toast. And God said, do you trust the timing of the light? I said, yeah. He goes, can you trust my timing of my yes? Yeah. Well, I don't know what's in front of me. If I try and jump out of wherever I don't want to be, God knows what's coming. Again, he doesn't miss a detail. So if we can praise him like Paul and Silas did in prison, if we can believe without seeing it like Thomas, you'll be so blessed in the waiting. And what I've learned is when I wait with God, we have such communion together. We get to have this richness that would never be there before. I can't even believe that happened this morning. I was like, God, this is just so amazing. This is so amazing. I'm going to end this with this analogy, this little story. So I have 3 boys, and my oldest, it's a miracle that he's alive for so many different reasons. But one of them is, when he was younger, my gosh, that kid was in everything. I would take a shower thinking he's just like watching a TV show, and I would come out and all the top kitchen cabinets are open and stuff's all over. And I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, just looking what's up there. I'm like, don't do that when mom's in the shower. Don't do that. Okay. But then the next time I would take a shower, you good? Yeah, sorry. Got a little excited. Squeezing the microphone. I remember one particular time. Very good. Still good. Okay. One particular time is after I had my 3rd baby, and I was inside feeding the infant, and my oldest was outside playing in the yard, and I just went to go out to check on him. I went to go reach for the front door, and here he comes in. He's kind of hobbling a little bit, and I said, well, where's your other boot? You have little rain boots, and he points way up in this tree. Can I just talk?
Yeah.
Okay. He points way up in this tree, and I'm like, what happened? And he said, oh, I fell from up there. Are you okay? And he goes, oh yeah, good thing I hit several branches on the way down, otherwise it'd be really bad. I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, Lord, just help me keep these kids alive. This is crazy. So he goes in his room, pulls on another boot. So he has 2 different boots, different styles, and goes right in the backyard. I'm like, I'm going with this time. So I grab the baby, and I'm like, we're going outside. But there's been so many, I've taken him to the ER several times just for different, accidents, and he's just the cool thing is, now that he's 16, he remembers all this stuff, and he doesn't like being in the hospital or, restricted, and so now he knows, hey, that's probably going to hurt, and I might break a leg, so I'm not going to do that. And I'm like, okay, thank you, God. But what I want to say is that every time he had a major injury and needed me, he would run to me, and I would respond with, I'm going to help you. Not once did I ask him, well, what happened? Yeah, I mean, the tree thing, yeah, but you know what I mean? When he needed to go to the ER, he needed help immediately. I never said, well, is it your fault? And what did you learn from this? Never gave him a lecture. We treat the wound first. And then if there's a lesson to be learned or something to talk about it, and that's what I'm learning with God. When I go to him and say, this hurts. I can't do this. This hurts. He takes me in and addresses the wound first. And then if we have to have a conversation about conviction or changed behavior or something, then we do that. But not once have I gone to God and he said, well, was it your fault or was it somebody else's? He's not like that. He wants you healed and whole. And the whole thing about the cross, the redemption of the cross, is Jesus is telling me, he's telling you that he did not die that painful death for us to be wrapped up in fear and anxiety and pain and wonder and questioning. It's not to win our souls for heaven. Yes, that's the ultimate goal. But for right now, he has all this freedom for us right now. And that's what he wants for us. And yes, it's a process. And that prison that God broke me out today, I did not have the keys, but I was willing to wait for the one who does. And that's the whole story of the redemption on the cross, the redemption of our lives. But as he's redeeming, we get to learn more about God. And like I said before, he came to this earth, not just to save us, but to show us who he is. And that is beautiful to me. You are redeemed. God doesn't miss a thing. And his timing is perfect.
Amen.
Let's lean into that. Okay.